Welcome back to the channel. If you've ever thought pocket change couldn't change your life, today's story is going to flip that idea on its head. Because we're about to dive into the unbelievable journey of a single 1994 quarter dollar coin, yes, just 25 cents, that ended up becoming one of the most valuable coins in American history. It didn't just fetch a tidy sum at auction, it shattered all expectations and sold for a mind-bending $184 million. And what's even more incredible is the bizarre, twisted, and deeply mysterious chain of events that led up to that moment. So settle in, because you're about to hear a tale that involves lost treasure, a forgotten vault, a secret collection hidden behind a wall, and one man's unexpected rise to international fame, all because of a simple coin minted in Philadelphia in 1994. Our story begins in the early spring of 1994 in Philadelphia, where the US Mint was operating at full throttle. That year, like most, thousands of coins were minted every hour, routine work in a system that had been operating for centuries. But that spring, something unusual happened. An experienced Mint employee named Gerald Haskins, who had worked at the Mint for over 20 years, noticed a strange vibration in one of the quarter press machines. He flagged it, halted production for a few minutes, and had it inspected by maintenance. Nothing serious turned up, so production resumed, and the team kept pressing out 1994 quarters. But what they didn't realize was that for about 11 minutes during that temporary malfunction, the press had slightly misaligned dies that stamped an incredibly rare and bizarre combination onto a small handful of coins. These errors were subtle but significant, barely noticeable to the naked eye unless you knew exactly what to look for. But they included things like a double die on the obverse, an almost imperceptible rotation of the reverse, and a tiny, ghost-like image of an eagle's feather that wasn't supposed to be there. Most of those coins disappeared into circulation within hours, never to be seen again except for one. That one coin, with its odd set of anomalies, ended up in the hands of a coin enthusiast in Baltimore named Harold Mason. Harold wasn't a professional collector. He didn't attend high-stakes auctions or publish in collector journals. He was just a retired history teacher with a soft spot for coins. Every Saturday morning, he'd go to the local flea market and trade coins with fellow hobbyists. He called it his metal meditation, a quiet joy of digging through old change, searching for patterns, studying mint marks, and imagining the stories behind each piece. One morning in early 1995, Harold stopped by a small vendor's booth and noticed a pile of quarter rolls stacked beside a sign that read unsearched, face value only. He paid $10 for a couple rolls and headed home. That evening, as he was checking each coin, his magnifying glass paused over a 1994 quarter. There was something off about it. The edge looked too sharp. The profile of Washington seemed slightly more pronounced. When he tilted it under the lamp, he noticed the tiniest glint, like an extra layer of shine under the surface. At first, he shrugged it off. But something about it nagged at him. He placed it in a plastic sleeve and added a note, strange luster. Recheck later. For the next 15 years, that coin sat quietly in a drawer, forgotten. Harold grew older. The hobby became less frequent. Eventually, he moved into a smaller place and packed most of his belongings, including the coin, into boxes. It might have stayed hidden forever, except that in 2010, Harold passed away. His niece, Lila, inherited most of his belongings, including the coin boxes. She wasn't into coins, but being sentimental, she kept the boxes intact and stored them in her attic. Now, fast forward to 2022. Lila's son, Jason, was a freshman in college studying archaeology. One summer day, he was helping clean out the attic when he came across the old coin boxes. Curious, he started flipping through them. That's when he noticed the note attached to the 1994 quarter. Strange luster. Recheck later. Jason had taken a course in artifact authentication and had access to the university's lab equipment. He decided to bring the coin in one afternoon. Under high magnification, the anomalies were immediately obvious. Not only were the die details off, but the surface showed signs of metallurgic inconsistencies, almost like it had been struck with an alloy mixture that wasn't standard for quarters. That caught the attention of one of his professors, who contacted a numismatics expert. The chain reaction that followed would shake the coin-collecting world to its core. The expert, a well-respected figure in rare coins named Dr. Raymond Saul, confirmed that the 1994 quarter dollar was not only unique but had likely been minted during a very short window of mechanical failure. He couldn't find another example like it in any database, auction record, or private collection. The combination of minting errors, metallurgic deviation, and pristine condition made it a once-in-a-century discovery. Word spread quickly. Offers started coming in from private collectors who had heard whispers of the Phantom Quarter, as it came to be known. At first, Jason and Lila were overwhelmed. They hadn't even considered selling it. But as more appraisers began weighing in, the coin's estimated value skyrocketed. Initially pegged at $2 million, then $5 million, then $12 million as bidding wars erupted behind the scenes, but things took a turn when a mysterious bidder, known only by the initials GK, submitted an official bid through a Geneva-based auction house, $184 million. Jason was stunned. The coin wasn't made of gold. It didn't contain diamonds. It wasn't ancient. It was, in essence, a 25-cent piece from 1994. But the story, the errors, the one-of-a-kind authenticity, it had all become legend. Rumors swirled that GK was an eccentric billionaire who believed the coin held symbolic power. Some speculated he saw it as a hedge against currency collapse. Others believed it was part of a larger collection of rare error coins from the 1990s, possibly one of the last pieces he needed. Or whatever the reason, the bid was real. The transaction took place privately but was confirmed through official legal filings. Jason and his family became instant millionaires overnight. They used the money to start a charitable foundation in Harold's name, focusing on historical education and preservation, just the kind of thing Harold would have loved. But that wasn't the end of the story. After the sale, the mysterious GK allowed a rare public viewing of the coin at a secure gallery in Zurich. The display lasted only 72 hours, but it drew lines around the block. Collectors flew in from around the world to see the infamous 1994 quarter. During the exhibit, several experts noticed that the coin bore more than just manufacturing anomalies. It had faint, almost imperceptible markings along the edge rim, ones that seemed to resemble map coordinates. The discovery sparked a frenzy. Numismatists, historians, and even cryptographers began speculating that the coin wasn't just a minting error, it was a clue. Some believed it led to a hidden cache of other misprinted coins. Others thought it might be tied to a secret program at the mint. One theory claimed the coin was created intentionally by a rogue engraver who left behind a trail to something bigger. The story was picked up by major news outlets. Documentaries were made. Jason was interviewed by everyone from CNBC to National Geographic. But despite the buzz, no one could crack the coin's mysterious coordinates. Some tried to replicate the markings using high-resolution scans. Others examined thousands of 1994 quarters, hoping to find another clue. None succeeded. To this day, the Phantom Quarter remains singular. Its origin story, journey, and the identity of its final buyer are the subject of countless theories. But one thing is absolutely certain, that little 1994 quarter dollar, minted during a glitch, forgotten in a drawer, and rediscovered by accident, holds the title of the most expensive 25-cent piece in American history, sold for an unfathomable $184 million. So the next time you find a coin in your pocket, take a second look. Because you never know. You could be holding a story, a mystery, and maybe even a fortune. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this wild tale, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap that notification bell so you never miss a story that could change your life. See you in the next one. Last, a simple 1980 quarter dollar. This is the unbelievable story of how a forgotten coin from the turn of a decade changed the life of one man forever, shocked the numismatic community, and made history as one of the most expensive coins ever sold. It all began in a small Pennsylvania town, nestled in the quiet suburbs not far from Philadelphia. The year was 2011, and life was simple for a man named Harold Monroe. Harold was in his late 50s, a retired school janitor living off his pension and modest savings. He'd spent most of his life in the same neighborhood, watched the seasons change from the same porch, and greeted the same neighbors on his daily walks. Harold wasn't a man of extravagance. His pleasures were humble: our morning coffee, crossword puzzles, and rummaging through garage sales on weekends. But he had one hobby that stuck with him since childhood: coin collecting. His interest in coins began when he was a boy, sifting through his grandfather's cigar box full of old coins from various decades. It wasn't a serious hobby, just a nostalgic pastime. Over the years, Harold amassed a modest collection of coins, nothing extravagant, mostly common finds. Yet he kept each coin in carefully labeled pouches, tucked away in showboxes under his bed. It wasn't about the value, it was about the memories. Then came one chilly Saturday in November that changed everything. Harold had wandered into a flea market at a local community center. Between tables of vintage toys and second-hand books, he spotted an elderly man with a spread of dusty mason jars filled with loose change. The man was friendly and told Harold he was cleaning out his basement after his brother passed away. "Nothing special," he said with a shrug, "just old change." Harold bent over the table, running his fingers through the coins. Most were typical, some wheat pennies, a few silver dimes, and lots of tarnished nickels. But then, buried in one of the jars, he noticed a coin with a peculiar sheen. It was a 1980 quarter, but something about it felt different. The shine was slightly off, and the edge seemed a touch thicker than normal. Intrigued, Harold offered to buy the jar, and the man let it go for $3. Back home, Harold dumped the contents onto his kitchen table and began sorting. He turned the 1980 quarter over in his hand again. The front bore the familiar face of George Washington, but the strike was unusually sharp. He pulled out his magnifying glass and studied it more closely. That's when he noticed it. Something was off with the mint mark. Instead of the usual P seeming shallow and clean, this one was punched deeper, almost as though it had been double-stamped. Even more curious, the coin had a certain luster that resembled the sheen of an uncirculated silver coin, but this was supposed to be clad. Confused, he dug out his old coin scale and measured the weight. To his astonishment, the coin was slightly heavier than it should have been. This didn't make sense. The 1980p quarter should weigh about 5.67 grams. This one clocked in at nearly 6.1 grams. That's when Harold felt the first jolt of excitement. He had stumbled upon something unusual. Still skeptical, he posted a few pictures in an online coin collector forum. Responses poured in quickly. Most dismissed it as a common coin with a slight minting error, nothing valuable. But one comment stood out. A user by the name CoinCurator88 messaged Harold directly and asked for clearer photos. Harold obliged. The next message he received left him stunned. The stranger wrote, "I don't want to alarm you, but I think you're sitting on a discovery that could change numismatic history. That might not just be an error coin, it might be one of the long-lost test strikes from the 1980 Philadelphia mint batch. I'd suggest you get that coin professionally evaluated immediately." Harold had never heard of test strikes before, so he began researching. What he learned amazed him. In 1980, the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia was testing new equipment and possibly experimenting with different alloy compositions for coin durability. There had been rumors, just whispers in collector circles, of a few test quarters accidentally making it into circulation. These coins were believed to be struck on a silver planchet meant for commemorative coins or had experimental die features that were never approved for public release. None had ever surfaced. Until now, a heart-pounding, Harold packed the coin and sent it to the professional coin grading service for authentication. Days turned into weeks. He tried not to get his hopes up. Maybe it was nothing. But then the call came. The voice on the other end was calm, but Harold could hear the underlying excitement. The coin had been authenticated. Not only was it real, it was a one-of-a-kind test strike from 1980, struck on a 90% silver planchet, with an experimental die not used in final production. Even more shocking, the surface bore microscopic details suggesting it had been hand-polished by mint workers before the strike, a process usually reserved for proof coins. Harold sat in stunned silence. He knew this coin was special, but he had no idea just how special. A word spread like wildfire through the collector community. Articles were written, experts debated the find, and collectors from around the world clamored to see the legendary coin. Auction houses began contacting Harold with offers. One company estimated it might fetch over $1 million. Another speculated it could go higher, possibly historic levels, Harold decided to wait and watch. He attended several coin conventions, displaying the coin under armed guard. Everywhere he went, collectors and experts lined up for a glimpse. One European billionaire collector reportedly offered him $15 million on the spot. Harold politely declined. He wasn't ready. Then came the day in June 2012 when he finally agreed to an international auction. Hosted in New York City, the auction attracted bidders from across the globe. The bidding opened at $10 million. Within minutes, it rocketed past $50 million. The room was electric. Phones buzzed with remote bids. Tension filled the air. When the final gavel struck, the 1980p quarter had sold for an unprecedented $119 million. The crowd erupted into applause. History had been made. It was, at the time, the most expensive modern coin ever sold, but the story doesn't end there. The buyer, a private collector from Hong Kong, later revealed that he had been searching for the rumored test coin for over a decade. He considered it a priceless artifact of minting history. The coin now resides in a private museum, occasionally displayed to the public by appointment. As for Harold Monroe, life changed overnight. With his newfound fortune, he paid off every debt he'd ever had, bought a modest home near the coast, and quietly donated large sums to local schools and charities. He still went on walks, still sipped coffee on his porch, but his days of scouring flea markets were over, at least for a while. He later appeared on several talk shows, humbly sharing his story. When asked what advice he'd give to others, he simply smiled and said, "Sometimes the most valuable things are hiding in plain sight. Keep your eyes open." Harold's discovery reignited interest in mint-era coins and experimental strikes. Collectors began revisiting their own collections, hoping they too had overlooked a gem. The numismatic world was buzzing again, all thanks to a quiet man, an old coin jar, and a bit of luck. To this day, no other coin like the 1980p quarter test strike has surfaced. Experts believe it may truly have been a one-off strike, an anomaly that somehow escaped the scrutiny of mint employees and made its way into the wild. Some theories suggest a mint worker may have pocketed the coin as a curiosity, only for it to be unknowingly passed on after death. Others believe it may have been part of a small, secret batch that was accidentally released during a chaotic time of changeover in mint operations. Whatever the truth, the mystery only adds to the coin's allure. It stands as a testament to how history can slip through the cracks, only to be rediscovered decades later in the unlikeliest of ways. And while Harold's story is extraordinary, it's also a reminder that treasures are often found not through wealth or power, but through curiosity and patience. So next time you find a coin on the ground, maybe don't just walk past it. You never know what history you might be holding in your hand. Thanks for sticking with us through this amazing story. If you enjoyed this tale of unexpected fortune and numismatic mystery, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss our next incredible story. See you in the next one.